Jillian Sidoti, how are you today?
I'm doing great, Jeff, and I'm actually going to stream this to my own personal Facebook page as well. I hope you don't mind.
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
I think this is like the third time I've streamed to my personal Facebook page.
I noticed you've been all over your page today. That one was only for an hour and a half, and the other one was only like an hour. So, I mean, that's only 2.5 hours of the day, really.
Yeah.
So what's another, half hour or so?
Yeah, but I thought this topic was really, really important, and Dr. Jamil is going to join us here in a second. Tell us about Dr. Jamil, Jeff, and how you met him.
I've never met him.
Okay, how you met him?
I'm just kidding. No, I'm teasing. So, actually, one of our fellow Last Lifers, Angel Renee, she has this thing that she does called Real Estate Investing Rocks, and we're both speakers at the same summit. That is actually how I met Dr. Jamil, and we had a lot of similarities and things that we sort of resonated on. And I said, I want to talk to this guy more. I had a conversation with him, and then I said to myself, I need to talk to him even more, so I'm going to have to pay for his time. So now he is my official and only coach in my entire life. So if I do a lot better the next little while, you can thank Dr. Jamil. If I do much worse, then blame me. So that's what I have to say about that. Because I actually really, really think I've been very impressed with what we've done so far, and we're just getting started. So, and Dr. Jamil is so positive, and he has such a unique way of looking at the world, and it just really makes a lot of sense to me. So I'm very excited to celebrate Dr. Jamil's life, your life, Jillian, and my life when we bring him on right after this.
And this is the Last Life Ever podcast. I forgot to say that at the beginning, and we're going to.
And I'm Jeffrey Holson. You're Jillian Sidoti. Good. Go.
Help me, my brother, can you lend me a hand as I walk through this land of confusion? If we give to each other, then there's nothing to take. Let's live life for the moment before it slips away.
I think Dr. Jamil is crying a little bit in the background. He had tears in his eyes.
I absolutely started forming a tear there. That was one of the most beautiful intros I've ever seen.
That's fantastic. That's two people crying in one day, Jillian. We have never even filmed two shows in the same day, and you're the second person that did that during the intro. So that must speak wonders for Jillian's husband's music, because that's actually his original music.
I literally just made a note to ask you what that song was called.
I'm glad you like it. I can't wait to tell him. So, because that means a lot. So thank you very much. So, but thank you so much for being here today. I am Jeff talks the world of you, and you do a lot of stuff. Can you just give us a little bit of what your background is and what your education is and what your philosophy is?
Sure. So first of all, Jillian and Jeff, thank you so much for having me. And for everyone who's listening, thank you guys so much for tuning in live. And if you're on the replay, happy to be with you. So a little bit about the background and education that I have. So I'm a life, business, and relationship coach, and I'm also a licensed naturopathic physician. Went to med school in Arizona, spent 5 years over there. I'm also a licensed neurolinguistic programming master practitioner. If anyone's familiar with NLP, think of it like a psychology of the study of excellence. You're trying to figure out the best people in the world in terms of success at a certain thing. How do they do what they do? How do they carry themselves? How do they think about the world? What's the perspective? And it's helping shift people into that kind of state of mind. That's the NLP side of it. And in regards to the philosophy, a big part of what I do has to do with helping people create what I call an extraordinary life without regret. An extraordinary life would be a life on their terms, because I find most people are living somebody else's version of their life, rather than a life that they're being called to, that's led by their heart and their spirit, versus based on other people's expectations of what they believe they should be doing. And a big aspect of what I do is that final part, without regret, because I think that in my own story, which I can share a little bit later, but with me and my father and kind of some family traumas that he went through and that we went through together as a family, I saw so many people living a life that they would grow to regret, whether they were older and they were looking back and the mindset was, I really wish I could go back and do it all over again. Or if they were young and they were looking forward and they were saying, well, I've already been doing whatever I'm doing for so long, so it's too late for me. I might as well keep doing it. And so for me, encouraging people to really live their extraordinary life. And when I think about this show, Last Life Ever, and the theme and the message that you guys put out, it just seems so in alignment.
See, and this, now you see, Jillian, why I didn't have a choice, but he sucked me into to hire him, because like he's preaching exactly what I want to aspire to all the time. Like, I told this story to you, Jamil, and to Jillian separately, but I don't think I've told it on the show. I kind of look at my life as a series of exciting things to do, and good things to do. But my real goal is to have lived an interesting enough life that I can tell people, like sitting in a bar as an old guy, I can just turn to the young kid next to me and be like, hey, let me tell you about my life. And that person actually care what I have to say. And I think the way you do that is by doing exciting things, extraordinary things, and frankly, making a difference in other people's life. If you can do those three things, you can have an exciting and interesting life. Then you're not going to have regrets. That's the goal, right? Like, I just don't want to regret anything.
Can I add something to that?
Sure.
So something that I frequently tell people, you probably heard me say it at least a few times, and whether it's a message or a phone call or whatever it is, I'll end it by saying, create a meaningful day. And or create a meaningful life, let's say. And I've had people say, how do I do that? And this is the thing. How you create a meaningful life is by creating a meaningful day. And then somebody says, well, how do I create a meaningful day? By creating meaningful moments. Meaning, when you focus on the day or the life or the month or the year, these are just concepts. These are abstract, because the only thing that's real is this moment. So if you say, how do I create a meaningful moment? By making a meaningful decision right now, and you just do a string of those, that creates the meaningful life. And to me, that's such an empowering place to come from, because you're basically saying, what is the choice that I'm choosing to make right now? And from this place, is it meaningful to me? At the end of the day, you do that, every night your head hits the pillow and you're going to feel so content. You're going to feel so good about the day that you lived. And then you string along those moments and you create a life like Jeff's talking about, that everybody wants to hear about at the bar.
Yeah, well, I mean, that might be you make me sound a little bit arrogant there, so maybe I have to revise it a little bit. A couple of people want to hear about it.
I love that story.
Yeah, but listen, I'll tell you, like, what you're saying kind of reminds me of a quote from Hal Elrod, the Miracle Morning guy, where he says, the moment that you accept full responsibility for everything in your life is the moment you can change anything in your life. Right. And I love that quote. Like, it super resonates with me, because I sit there and I say, yeah, that's exactly right. Because the day that I decided not to have bad days is the day I didn't have bad days anymore. Until I made that decision. And that's really it. Is just creating a meaningful moment and then having a whole bunch of those in a row. And now I'm 25 years without bad days.
And from what I know about you, Jeff, a story that you shared with me, when someone said to you after your diagnosis years ago, oh, I guess today was a bad day. And you were like, no, not really. And it's because I think a lot of people, they come from this place that bad days exist. And please don't get me wrong, anyone who's listening, I'm not trying to belittle anything that anyone's experiencing or going through. I'm just having us step back for a moment and see that good and bad are judgments that we place on the day. Mm-hmm. So prior to the judgments, there's just a day. And somewhere on the planet right now, somebody's having the greatest day of their life. So today, there's something inherently good or bad about it. Now, are there things happening in your life that you don't like? Yeah, probably. If you're most people, there's probably something. But then that's where the beauty comes in of making that meaningful moment. So what would you like to do about that? What's this action you can take? How can you shift how you're showing up to make that better? What conversation could you have? What meaningful action could you take? Whatever the case may be. Step into that role of being a creator, of taking responsibility for your life. And from that place, you can make life anything you want it to be. It might take some time to create the result, but you can have that internal shift immediately.
I'm curious if there's a trigger for doing that. Like, like I confessed to Jeff over the weekend that one thing I found myself doing that I don't do a lot of, but have been doing lately, for a variety of reasons, is watching too much TV. And now I'm having a problem breaking that habit. So is there something that I should say to myself? Like, I guess I'm kind of maybe I should lie down on the couch back here and just look up at the ceiling and Sigmund Freud myself, because that's really where I'm going right now. I'm thinking like, oh, I should just say, am I creating a meaningful moment by sitting here watching TV? I'm probably not. Thus and so, my day in life are.
Keep in mind something that I think is really important. And I'm not saying whether or not you do this, but if anyone is listening, this could be really valuable. I think a lot of times what we do is there's a lot of self-judgment or shaming or things of this nature that we do to ourselves because we carry this expectation of what we should be doing. Like, and if you can't see me, should is in quotes. It's like, what we should be doing. And I think so from that place, it's like saying, I watched a lot of TV, let's say this weekend. And if I were to say, I probably didn't create any meaningful moments. Well, that depends. It depends on, maybe you watched it with somebody and maybe you really enjoyed yourself and that could have been tremendously meaningful. Or maybe it was just yourself, but you had such a good time and it was a show that you really enjoyed and it was an aspect of self-care for you. That could be very meaningful. I think at the end of the day, what it really comes down to when you said, is there something I could say to myself or ask myself? It really comes down to, it sounds simple, but yet this is where the power is. Choose. Mm-hmm. And what I mean by that is when somebody says, I really would love to not watch TV and go outside and do something, then choose it. And if we don't choose it, it just means we don't really want to. And that's completely okay. I think there's the judgment and the shaming that we throw on there that just makes it a lot worse for ourselves. And a great mentor of mine, he shared this story with me that I love. This idea that if you have a flowering plant in your house and it's in a dark corner and it's not getting any light and it's not doing well, and then you stare at it and it makes sense and you go, oh, it's not getting any light. That's why it's dying. So the solution is, let me move the pot into the light. But what most people do metaphorically is they leave the pot there and they just start questioning, wow, what kind of plant owner am I that I've been neglecting this plant? Let me sit here and figure out why I've done that over the years, instead of just moving the plant into the light. And it's like that's what needs to get done. And all the other stuff is just kind of head trash that goes on. And so I think with that being said, if we're watching TV, watch TV. If we're doing the dishes, do the dishes. If we're eating, eat. Whatever we're doing, slow down, be present, enjoy it. Otherwise, you're kind of wasting the moment. So I think it's like be there fully, and own whatever it is that you're choosing to do because you want to do it, and do it because you want to do it. I think that TV, video games, computer, whatever it is people love to do, do it because it brings you joy. Do it because it brings you happiness. And I'll stop there because I feel like I can keep ranting on that for a while.
We could let you keep ranting. Those are the best types of
I mean, actually, what we need to do, Jillian, is we just need to go like this and let him talk. Go ahead.
Great to be with you all again.
Yeah.
See, he thought I was kidding. And he stopped talking. Like I put him on the spot, and he's like, "I have nothing left to say." All right, well, that was the interview, guys. It's good having you.
This is great. Go ahead. No, please.
Well, I was going to say, so one of the things that you talked about at the event that when I first heard you talk was you told this story about perspective, right? And about a person whose friend was always late. Can you give us the short version of that? Because I think that's really powerful. If you remember what I'm talking about.
Yep, I got it. And so I want everyone who's listening to imagine that you're going out to dinner with a friend of yours. And let's say you may or may not be this kind of person. You hate being late and you hate it when other people make you late. And so you tell your friend 7:00, be in front of the house because your friend's picking you up. And you're the kind of person, 6:45, you're outside waiting. And so 6:45 rolls around, you send a text, hey, I'm outside. They don't respond. 7:00 rolls around, they're not there. So now you're getting irritated and you start telling yourself the story of, where is he? Where is she? And you send a text, hey, are you coming? And they don't respond. So then you call and maybe, it goes to voicemail. They don't answer. then you start getting irritated and upset and angry. And you start telling yourself these stories of, wow, this person, this is the 5th time they did this. They know how much this bothers me. And then you start saying, they don't respect me. And then maybe now it's 7:15, 7:20, you call again. Eventually you go back inside and maybe a friend, a spouse, a partner, whoever's there, or a kid says, I thought you were going out. And you say, yeah, me too. And you say it in like a really pissed off kind of way. And the mindset is, in that moment, that person's not my friend anymore. I'm not going to go out with them anymore. And you're carrying a lot of anger and, let's say, resentment and frustration. And then you get a phone call. And the phone call is a mutual friend. And they say, hey, did you hear what happened to Gary? Did you hear what happened to Mike? Excuse me. Did you hear what happened to Mike or Gary? And you say, no, what happened? And they say, they got into a car accident. And in that moment, there's this pause of like, well, what do you mean? Like, are they okay? And they say, I don't know. I just heard they're in this hospital. So there you are rushing into the car to drive over there to check. And immediately all of the anger is gone. There's not like one hint of it. Now there's fear and there's worry. And then you're driving and there's concern. And then at some point, maybe you start blaming yourself. Oh my God, they were picking me up and they got into an accident. Now I'm feeling guilty. Maybe it's my fault. And all of this is going on. And then you get to the hospital and you run inside and it turns out that they're okay. They're a little banged up, but they're fine. And there's so much relief that washes over you. Immediately, worry, concern, fear, gone. Now you have relief. And the doctor says, yeah, your friend's doing fine. They're going to be gone in an hour if you want to stay with them. And you're both laughing and joking. And your friend goes, hey, I left extra early because I knew you didn't want me to be late. And you start laughing and you both drive home together. You feel really good. You're so grateful that they're doing well. And then you come back home and it's like, wow, what an experience. But when you look at that experience, everything that you felt came from the story that you told yourself in the moment. Nothing was based on external experiences. You started off, looking forward to the dinner and you had the expectation they were coming. Then they didn't show up. And then because they didn't show up, you told yourself a story about why they didn't show up and what that meant, which created irritation and frustration. And then you made it even deeper with, oh, they don't respect me and stuff like that. That created anger. And then eventually you find out about what might happen. Because again, they're in the hospital, but you don't know what that means. It could mean they're doing fine. It could mean they're dead. You don't know. So you tell yourself a story. Worst case scenario, you go into fear mode. And all this happens. And then eventually you get there and there's relief. And you might tell yourself because they're okay. But there are cultures in the world where funerals are celebrations of life. So depending on how you look at the world, even if they physically died, you might have told yourself a different story about that. And you still might have felt some degree of relief if you knew they were suffering from all these type of ailments or whatever the case may be. So my point in sharing the story that Jeff brought up is everything we feel is based on our thinking and the stories that we tell ourselves that we believe. So if you recognize that if you're upset, if you're frustrated, if you're feeling negative emotion, not negative in the sense that it's bad, but negative in the sense that it's unserving. It's not helping you if you want to feel in a great space. All that's of your creation. And the moment we say, I feel the way I feel because that person or that situation, you're exporting that power, you're projecting it out, and you're giving it away. And once you do that, you step more into that victim mentality.
Yeah, and see that goes along with that Hal Elrod quote, right? That if you accept responsibility for everything, then you can change anything. And that's really what you're saying, is that all this stuff that was happening was really just your perspective on what's happening. And I think that's like when people ask me about the no bad days thing, they're always like, well, that must be nice, or I wish I could have that happen. But the reality is the reason I don't have bad days is because I don't expect to have bad days. And so I'm constantly looking for positive things that are going on in my life, and I'm minimizing the negative stuff. And it works really, really well for me. And, some bad stuff or objectively negative stuff is going to happen to everyone every single day. And you just gotta learn to deal with it and sort of deal with the hands that you're dealt and figure out the best possible course of action for whatever you're facing. And if you do that, then your life turns out to be extraordinary.
Yeah, using your story and what you just shared. When you say to somebody, I don't have bad days, and they say, oh, that must be nice, and like I wish I could do that. In my mind, there's two types of people based on just that story right there, in terms of the way they process information, the way they have a perspective and see the world. And again, neither is better or worse or good or bad. This is all about what's useful. So I hope anything that I've said so far, anything that you guys share, anything that we share going forward, I hope people hear it from a lens of what's the 1, 2, 3 things that I can apply to my life to just make it that much better. Not, oh, like I feel bad because I'm not doing A, B, and C. It's not about guilt and shaming and judgment. None of that. This is just potential. So now Jeff says, I don't have bad days. When people recognize that's a choice, for some people that doesn't compute because they don't see the world like that. So for those people, good and bad days are outside of their control. And it turns into, I hope I have good days. Versus there's a whole other type of person who says, I'm going to create a good day because the way I see it. But notice that even language is kind of failing me in this moment because I don't mean it as there's this kind of person and that kind of person. And then you go, well, I guess I'm not that kind of person. There is no such thing as a permanent personality. There's no such thing as this is just the way that I am. This is the way you have conditioned yourself to be. This is the actions and the way of being that you have repetitively chosen. So that's why it feels like it's who you are. There is no such thing as it's just the way that I am. And so when we can make new choices, then from that place, we can step into anything we want. But if somebody thinks the idea of not having bad days anymore would be nice, try it on. Try choosing it. Try seeing your days as neutral and seeing how you can make it good and see what happens. Like I promise you, you're going to find a really beautiful experience of life ensues if you give it some time.
That's very cool. Very cool. I just feel like what you're saying is that life is just a series of choices, and you can choose where you go, no matter what cards you've been dealt. And I think we see this all the time, right? With people who have, I forget the gentleman's name, he's like famous. He has no arms and no legs, and he goes around and does all this public speaking and does all these extreme sports, like climbing mountains and stuff. Of course, he needs assistance in doing that, but he figured out a way to do it. He made the choice to figure out a way to do that. I wish I remembered the guy's name. That's a terrible story to tell because I don't remember.
I know what you're talking about. I even know what he looks like, but I'm not getting the name.
Yeah.
But.
Yeah. Well, if anyone knows that guy, tell us what his name is. And also let's see if we can get him on the podcast. Cause I think he'd be a great guest.
Yeah.
Because I also know who you're talking about, Jillian, and have no idea what his name is. So,
to Jillian's point, real quick, this is the thing I hope that people see too. Something I tell people frequently is we're all running a race of one. And what I mean by that is there is no comparison unless you're actively trying to run somebody else's race. And when you're actively trying to run somebody else's race, it's because, oh, he's doing that and she's doing this and that seems nice, like that can make money, or that maybe that would make me feel enough. Then eventually you're running down the wrong road and you're running this race that you don't even want to be running. And then you don't realize until maybe later on that you're going the wrong way or you're miserable and you're living up to other people's expectations of this is what you should be doing. But when you come back to saying, I'm running my race, the only comparison is who I was yesterday. Then at that point, to Jillian's point, it doesn't matter who you are, where you live, if you got no arms and no legs, it doesn't matter what the circumstance is of your life. Can that guy do everything that other people who have all 4 limbs can? No, but that's not the point. The point is he doesn't allow limitation to stop him as much as possible. He does what he can to say, I'm going to find a way to do this as best as I can. If he compares himself to other people who have completely different lives, completely different upbringings, different backgrounds, all this kind of stuff, that's not useful. And so I think when we compare ourselves to other people, we feel bad, especially because some people are further along on the journey. We're all in different points of our journey. And so you might compare yourself to somebody in the same profession or career path as you. And then you feel bad about it because they're maybe more successful. But you realize, wow, they're 10 years ahead of me, 20 years ahead of me, or at least they've taken a lot more action, or they're taking more correct action, or whatever the case may be. They're doing something I'm not doing. And so that's why they're successful. Let me look at that as an inspiring thing. It's showing me what's possible for me. And now from that place, again, a race of one, What's the meaningful choice I can make right now to move me forward in the direction that I want to go? There is always something that we can do, no matter what somebody's going through, no matter where they're at in their life. There's people at every moment. I remember when Lance Armstrong said getting diagnosed with cancer was the best thing that ever happened to him. And he said that because it woke him up. It made him feel like, wow, I was living my life from this perspective of one day, every day was just kind of monotonous, going through the motions, rushing through it, not really being present with people. And then after the diagnosis, when he felt his mortality, it turned into, I'm going to slow down. I'm going to be present. I'm going to enjoy this ride of life. Now, you don't have to get cancer to have that realization. You can get it right now just for us talking about it. But if we can just slow down, be present, and actually get clear. When you slow down, there's a voice in you. Think of it like an inner whisper. You can call that intuition. You can call that your spirit. You can call that whatever you want. Your unconscious, whatever you want to call it. That voice is going to whisper your whole life. And when you're drowning it out with expectations of other people and you're being busy and you're rushing through life, you're not going to hear it. But when you quiet down, when you go into nature, when you just close your eyes and you meditate or you pray and you're just present, you hear that whisper. It's like, hey, what are you doing? We're not happy. Why'd you do that? You should go do that. That sounds so awesome. Like, we can really help a lot of people with that. And then that voice of fear comes in. Oh no, we can't do it for this reason, or what are people going to think? Strongly encourage you to ignore that voice.
What you mentioned something interesting, which is that you talked about prayer or meditation. Is there a specific prayer, meditation, time of day that you recommend when it comes to prayer and meditation?
Yeah, so the first answer is that the time for prayer and meditation is whatever the right time is for the individual. So some people who are listening, same thing with medicine. Like when I was in a clinic working with patients, people are like, oh, what should I do? Well, the answer is going to be highly specific to you. And so in the same way, first and foremost, if somebody isn't meditating, whether it's meditation, prayer, taking a moment of silence, meditation doesn't necessarily have to mean, oh, you're just sitting on a chair or on a pillow in a lotus position with your fingers together and saying some mantra. Some people, meditation is dancing. Some people, meditation is playing golf. Some people, meditation is going for a walk. Anything that brings you present to in this moment, the thoughts for the most part dissipate and you're just here. You're here now fully. To me, that's being meditative. And however you do that is right. And so I think that if somebody chooses to do that in the morning because they like starting their day like that, awesome. Some people love doing it before bed because it helps them go to sleep. And that's wonderful too. I think that when it comes to time of doing it, there's no right or wrong. If anything, the amount of data and research on meditation and prayer is astounding. And anyone who's not doing either of those, it can dramatically improve the quality of your life and your mental functioning. So I highly recommend you begin doing it.
That's awesome. Yeah, no. And I mean, we do meditation. My kids and I, before COVID hit, used to do meditation every day. We'd drive past a lake on the way to school. And I would go out of my way to drive down this road to get to this lake. And I'd sit there and have them meditate before school. And we've unfortunately had to stop doing that because we're not driving to school anymore. And now what we do is we try to do it at night before they go to bed. And that makes for a more peaceful, because I just can't seem to wrangle them in the morning. So that's why I asked, because I wanted to know, is there a magical moment or time that you should be doing it? But if it doesn't matter, then I'm just going to get on with my bad self.
Well, so keep in mind, it doesn't matter in the sense that if I were to tell you, yep, 8 a.m., there's going to be somebody listening going, but I'm at work at 8 a.m. Yeah. And then all of a sudden now they tell themselves, well, I can't do it. So it really turns into what is the best time for you. And once, as long as you do it, it could be 30 seconds. It could be a minute. It could be 5 minutes. It could be an hour. It could be 10 minutes. There's no wrong way to do it other than not doing it. And I remember hearing, the Dalai Lama talks about, he typically meditates 1 hour a day from what I've been told. And on the days he's most busy, he's got the amount of things that are going on are crazy. Those are the days he says, I have to make sure I meditate 2 hours on those days. And because people tell themselves the story, I don't have time. Right. When the thing is, if you don't have time to meditate, then you don't have time not to meditate, because that means that your life, respectfully, is very disordered in the sense that you have lost control of your time, and you've lost control of how you are prioritizing things, because you're not putting yourself first. And if you don't put yourself first, you can't take care of others over the long run. People who, especially I work with a lot of business owners and entrepreneurs, and the amount of them that experience burnout is extreme, but it's because they push themselves and they put their self-care last. And because they put it last, they can only go for so long when you're burning the candle at both ends. But if you give yourself that 5 minutes, that 10 minutes, it's such a powerful way to restore yourself.
Okay, that's awesome. I feel like I need to make sure that we prioritize this in our family is meditation, and take my kids' resistance as they're protesting. I'm not going to listen to it anymore. I'm just going to be like, no, you're doing this. Sorry, I'm forcing you to meditate, children.
Yeah, I don't know if you can actually force people to meditate, Jillian, because I think part of it is a willingness to do it as part of the critical component, but you certainly can model it for them, right?
Yeah. Well, we just do 10 minutes. We don't do a long time. Sometimes I even cut it down to 5 minutes. My close to teenage son tends to protest a lot before doing it. Like, I don't want to do it. I'm tired. I just want to go to bed. And then I can see a change in him when he does do it. So I'm going to keep at it and just make it a priority.
You should, Jillian. You should do that.
Can I suggest something?
Yeah.
Just that depending on what your son and any other children that you have or anyone who's listening is interested in, oftentimes children don't necessarily want to listen to their parents because it's, that's just dad, that's just mom. But when somebody else says it, who they admire, they look up to, it's a role model, that becomes a lot more meaningful. And one example is, let's say, hypothetically, your kid loves basketball. Well, all the top, let's say, NBA players, not only are they sleeping 8, 10, 12, like LeBron James sleeps 12 hours a day. Not only are they sleeping for restoration, but they meditate and they do all these practices because they know it helps them perform better. So here's somebody listening going, wow, my daughter, my son, they love hockey, they love volleyball, they love basketball, they love track. And it's like, hey, did you know that so-and-so, that whoever that athlete is that they admire, that they meditate? And if you meditate, you can be like them. And now all of a sudden they're like, really? And now they're interested. So when you want to motivate someone to do something, it's important that you understand what already motivates them. You understand what they're already driven by. And then when you speak to them in that way, it's like you're speaking their language. Now they're all in because what's important to them, you have now linked this meditation or whatever it is to that. And you can do the same thing with healthy eating, And when they see that, that really works to drive behavior. But if we try to force it, if we try to tell people, you're going to do this because it's good for you, but they don't maybe understand why, they're usually pretty resistant because people in general don't like to be told what to do.
No, particularly close to teenage years children.
Yeah.
So, all right. So I'm going to shift gears just a little bit here because Jamil, you have sort of an extraordinary grasp at this stuff for someone your age, because you're considerably younger than Jillian and I. We're the old folks here. And so what do you attribute that to? How did you figure this stuff out at 30 years old or whatever you are now?
Yeah. And so if I may, I can share a short version of my story because I feel like that is how I would most answer that adequately. And so short version, I started my health journey when I was 14 years old, and it really got inspired by joining the track team and being pretty horrendous at running and not knowing why. And I was training, I was doing everything I could, but wasn't performing. My track times weren't improving, and I was getting frustrated with that. And so it started. The initial impetus was, for me, how do I improve this? And intuitively, I just felt this hit of maybe it's what I'm eating. And so I did some online searches and I found out, maybe 3 liters of soda a day and fast food 4 times a week and hating water. Maybe that's a problem.
How long did that take to search out on the internet? I can't imagine that they must hide that information somewhere.
It was not as prevalent as it is now because that was 16 years ago. But at the same time, it was there. I found it. And I made some, and it was a lot worse. I gave you just superficial what I was doing, but also wasn't sleeping and all that stuff. And so I figured that stuff out because I just didn't know it. And I was like, all right, let me start applying some of this. And some of the big stuff, I overnight made changes, and some of the smaller stuff took me a year or two to do, maybe 3. And I noticed some profound changes in about a month or 2. Stopped getting sick and started sleeping a lot better. Energy went through the roof, and my skin cleared up because I had acne, and I started running a lot faster. And I said, all right, I'm onto something. There's got to be more. And so I dove in as much as I possibly could, whether it be buying books, online searches, seeking out different mentors, all in the realm of health, holistic medicine, lifestyle medicine. I came from a family of physicians. And so I already had the conventional side, like mentally, but I didn't know anything about, holistic medicine, integrative medicine, things of that nature. So I was diving into that, and I was finding out about all these doctors from around the world who were really great at reversing disease, bringing people to health. And I said, wow, I'm doing a little bit of this and I'm feeling it in myself. And eventually I'd be meeting people, family parties, different physicians that I knew, whether they be family, friends of family, people in school, whatever the case may be. And they would say, hey, I noticed that you're doing a lot better. What are you doing? I would tell them, they would start applying it. I would hear back a couple of weeks later, a month later, hey, I tried what you said. I'm feeling so much better. And for me, what really kind of hit it home was there were physicians in my family who, it'd be a family party and I'm 14, but I was diving into like the biochem and stuff like that. I just loved it. And they would say, what have you been up to? And I would say, hey, I've been studying, this condition. And did you know that if they did A, B, and C, they could get off the med and reverse it? And they would look at me like I had 3 heads, and they would say, no, I didn't know that. And then they would tell me more, and we'd get into a beautiful conversation. They would try it out with their patients, and it would work. And their patients would get better and get off their meds and lose a ton of weight. And they would say, well, what do you, like, this is amazing. And so that was the beginning of this journey. And from 14 to 19, I started thinking, what are the other areas of a really fulfilling life? I thought about relationships. And just like with health, I went out and I just dove in fully, and I bought as much as I could, whether it's, buying it like with money or just, my time, the top dating coaches, marriage therapists in the world, and learning about communication, learning about what's the difference that makes a difference in relationships. Why are some people 90 years old and they're so in love and they've been married for 60, 70 years? And other people, their relationships don't do that well. What causes that? And so I dove into that. And just like with health, started helping people. And there were points where I was 15, I was mediating people's marriages, and they told me that's why they didn't get a divorce. And I felt so amazing about that, such positive reinforcement. I kept diving in, and I got into the work of Tony Robbins and NLP, and how was it that these guys were taking people that were in therapy for 20 years and not getting really good results, and in 1 hour completely eliminate the problem. And I thought, I want to learn that. So I dove into that. And that
I got to back up here for a second, because you've mentioned this several times, and I've always known NLP to be something that you do outward to other people to get them to buy things, right? That's how I understand NLP. Like, instead of saying to somebody when they come to you to buy something from you, the cost is, you say the investment is, things like of that nature. Can you explain when you're using neuro-linguistic programming, are you using it on yourself? And if so, like, what are give us an example of neuro-linguistic programming that we can change, or our audience can change right away?
Sure. Yeah. So one thing you just talked about, there are people who use NLP as a way to enhance their selling process. Mm-hmm. Because NLP is really just understanding how the mind works.
Right.
And if you understand how the mind works, you can communicate in a way that's going to be most receptive to people. Right. And you just gave an example that it's called reframing. And when you reframe a situation, it's just shifting the way you're looking at it. It's shifting the way you're seeing it. So in the example that you just said, instead of saying it costs X amount of dollars, the investment is this. Well, now all of a sudden, that's a whole different reframe, because if something costs money, it's like taking something from me. Mm-hmm. But if it's an investment that I'm making, it's something I'm going to get a return on.
Right.
And even though it's a subtle distinction, it's a massively powerful way of seeing it differently. In the same way that in that example I gave, you're on the curb and your friend's supposed to be coming at 7 o'clock. Well, if you tell yourself the story about why your friend is late, And that story is, oh, they're late because they don't respect me and all these things that creates downstream certain emotions, right? The anger, the frustration, all that kind of stuff, the irritation. But if you reframe it, oh no, they probably got stuck in traffic. I remember they told me that, they just got a dog and the dog's been running around and it's hard to control. And so he or she is probably busy right now. And now you tell yourself a different story. You're reframing the situation about why they're not here, and you feel something different. And so reframing is one tool of 1,000 that is present in NLP. But NLP absolutely is about so much more than just selling. NLP is just a way of enhancing selling. Does that answer that?
Oh yeah, no, it absolutely does.
Because like if you watch like Tony Robbins, like there's a Netflix thing, Not Your Guru. Have you seen this? I thought that was fascinating, Jillian. If you haven't seen it, you definitely check this out.
Okay.
It's called Not Your Guru, and the things that are happening on this stage are unbelievable. These people are, suicidal, and then he talks to them for 15 minutes, and then they're like, my life is awesome. I mean, it's literally that insane, right? It almost seems like a magic trick. And I have a little bit of skepticism about this stuff sometimes, but seeing it live like that was compelling evidence that it does work in some circumstances. And then frankly, talking to you, Jamil, like I feel like, we've had some things where it's like, wow, that really is like, we really do shift the way we look at something, and then it can change your perspective completely, like on the spot. And that's the most powerful part of NLP, is this like paradigm shift that occurs in how you look at things.
Cool. Because think of it like this. A big aspect of my work is helping people have insights. Now, what is an insight? An insight is you see something new. Mm-hmm. You see something that you haven't seen before. If you, back in the day, imagine I just snap my fingers and you just appear on Earth and you've never been on Earth before, and it's daytime, and you get comfortable with the way things are, and then all of a sudden the sun starts going down and it starts getting dark, and you start freaking out because you don't know what the hell's going on, and that ball in the sky of fire is disappearing, it's getting cold, and maybe you're scared and you think the world's ending. But then then you pass out and you fall asleep at some point. And then you wake up and the sun's out again, and you say, "Oh, maybe that was all a dream." But then then it happens again, and then you freak out a little bit, but not as much because you're like, "I've seen this before." And then the third day, you're like, "Oh, this is like a pattern. This happens." And now all of a sudden, that's it. Like you're not scared of the moon anymore, because you see there's a pattern. There's an insight there. In the same way, you mentioned like the Tony Robbins thing in NLP. How you carry yourself. It could be, they call it your physiology. It could be the posture, the breathing patterns, any of that kind of stuff. The way you're thinking, the way you're seeing the world, the language that you use, all of that generates your experience. One of the famous examples that, Tony always talks about, and for those visually on the screen, I'll demonstrate it. If I say there's a person behind door number 1 and they're depressed, I want you to tell me what their physiology is like. And it's like, are they slouched over, or are they sitting up nice and tall, shoulders back? They're usually slouched over. Are they looking up like tall and proud, or are they kind of, looking down? They're usually looking down. Are they speaking powerfully and intensely and passionately and purposely, or are they kind of slurring their words and slowing down and speaking really meekly? They're usually doing that. And when you recognize that the physiology actually plays a role in how you feel, because there are studies that just shifting your posture and holding that for 1 minute, 2 minutes, they call it power posing. But if you do something like that, it can raise testosterone and it can lower your cortisol, and all of a sudden you feel more powerful. It's like a Superman or a Wonder Woman kind of pose. That's just an example. But yes, you can absolutely have profound transformations in somebody's life very quickly if you're understanding how they're creating their experience of life in their mind. Because if I help you shift the way you see your world, your whole world changes. And the emotions that you had were only relevant based on that interpretation of the world. So now, because the interpretation is shifted, you have a whole different emotional experience.
Yeah, and Jillian, I would put it this way, like, and I think Jamil would agree with this. So there's 2 examples of this recently in your and I's relationship, right? One, today when we were interviewing TJ, and he was talking about how if you just don't give a shit, it's like magnetic to other people, right? Like, remember he said that? And it was like, that's exactly right. Like, if you just believe in yourself fully, then people just want to be around you because it changes how they feel, right? And so that's one. But then the more, I think, potent example of this is, you know, Jillian, you've told me before you go on stage to speak, you have certain music you like to listen to, like you have a playlist, right? That gets you pumped up and ready to go.
Yeah.
Right. That is NLP.
Yep.
Yeah.
You're changing your whole attitude. You're getting yourself ready to go out and, like, you know, kill something.
If I told people what I listen to before I go on stage, they'd be scared and not want to be around me anymore, I think.
I you know, it made my wife love you, though. So it's
see, though, like in that moment when Jillian's about to go on stage, and let's say there's a certain song that I'd imagine makes you feel either confident or powerful or something.
It's Eye of the Tiger for her. Let's go.
It's not Eye of the Tiger, but if my husband heard this broadcast and knew what song it was, he divorced me.
He knows what song it is anyway, because he already, you know, it already happened once. It came out once, remember?
Yeah, he was not. He wasn't
impressed.
No, and I think he put it out of his mind. I think he has
He's forgotten it. Oh,
yeah, because he's mentioned this artist a couple of times and told me he doesn't want to be friends with anybody who likes this artist. So, yeah.
Is it fair to say that when you listen to that song, though, before you go out, it does something beneficial for you?
It just makes me more confident, is what it does. Because it's basically a song that is just.
It's Eye of the Tiger. It's just your version of it.
And I have to be honest, it's a nasty song. So I've taken it off my running playlist because I don't want it. I just want to use it for special occasions because I don't want to infiltrate like have that song infiltrate my ego. And I'll just tell everybody what song it is. It's Cardi B, Bodak Yellow, which is a terrible song, by the way. It's awful. It's not appropriate for children. Like, it's literally, the subject matter is terrible, but it just would get me pumped up.
But it speaks to you. And it's like, you know, there's no right way to meditate. There's no right song to listen to before Jillian Sidoti goes on stage, except for what works for Jillian Sidoti. All right. So you got digging into this NLP stuff, right? When you're like 15 and stuff.
Yeah.
And
into it.
Yeah. So what came next?
Yeah. And then so that all continued until I was 19. It's continued to this day, but the main part of the story continued to when I was 19. And then my father had a brain aneurysm. I was in my sophomore year at Fordham University. It's a college in the Bronx in New York. It's where I'm from. And he had this brain aneurysm. And for those of people who are not familiar, imagine one of the blood vessels in the brain. Think of it like a tube. And then imagine a part of it kind of balloons out. And if you're fortunate, you have a really bad headache, you go, you get it checked out, they clip it, you're good to go. With my dad, it ruptured. So imagine that balloon popped. And so from that place, he went into a 4-hour brain surgery. And we were told that it was the worst aneurysm that the neurosurgeon ever saw. And he said that survival chances were low. And he said less than 5%. And you can imagine that 4 hours sitting in the hospital, you know, some of you may have had an experience like this. And, you know, 4 hours sitting in the hospital with that news and just waiting and waiting. And the 4 hours feels like a day, 5 days, 10 days. And eventually he survived. And so already it was a miracle, but he was in a coma. And so I remember walking into the room, and this is where a massive part of why I do what I do shows up. I looked at him, and in that moment, there were these two primary emotions that came up. The first was helplessness, because I felt like I really couldn't do anything to help him. I wanted to do anything I could to improve the situation. It felt like I could help my mom or my sister or anyone else in the room, but I couldn't help him. It was just like waiting to see what would happen. And because of how critical he was, it felt like waiting for him to die. And the second emotion was regret. The regret was I felt like I didn't know him as much as I could. It felt like I took my relationship with him for granted. It felt like I missed out and I messed up. And I didn't have family in that sense as a priority the way I do now. And fast forward 3 years, he survived an extra 3 years before he passed away. He was in a coma for a few months before coming out of it. And in those 3 years, you know, I took 2.5 years off after I graduated to be one of his primary caregivers. And, you know, my prayers got answered. I got to spend 10, 12, 15 hours a day with him. And we were working out together, physical therapy together, singing together, walking together, TV, like everything. We were just connecting. And I learned so much about him and that I didn't know. And he became one of my best friends. And I feel like throughout those 3 years, I learned so much about myself and about life. And I felt like I got tested. I had my highest highs, moments where it's me and my dad for 12 hours, just laughing and having a great time. And I had my lowest lows where he had seizures in my arms that lasted 3, 4, or 5 minutes. And I didn't know if he was going to die or not. Moments where he forgot who I was. And I was arguing with him that I wasn't his nephew. And I remember that just felt like my foundation, like the floor just like got taken out underneath me.
Wow.
And in those 3 years, there was just so many ups, so many downs. And the first year and a half or so, about 500 something days, I went to bed every night wondering, was that the last time I'm going to see my dad? And I woke up every morning kind of in this little bit of a brain fog thinking, was that all a dream? And I would come downstairs and he wouldn't be there in the beginning. And then when he was home after outpatient stuff, he was there, but it was very different, of course. And he was really reliant on me and my mom, my sister and family. And the roles kind of switched. He's still my dad, but now I'm the one taking care of him. And that caused me to really need to, step up and mature in ways that I hadn't up until that point. And when he passed away, I was 21, about to turn 22. And I just remember being at his wake, and it was an open casket, and there were over 5 hours, over 7,000 people came. And I shook every single one of their hands. And they said, almost everybody said, your dad saved my life. And my dad was a primary care physician, and he was 49 when he had his aneurysm, 53 when he passed away. And I just remember feeling in that moment, first humbled at the amount of impact that this man had, but also I felt this awakening, this realization that I had been playing small, that I cared way too much about what other people thought about me, that I was afraid of rejection, and that I was limiting my shine. I was dimming my light. I feel like we all have this divine spark inside. We all have this unique gift that we can give in a way that nobody else can, because it's our unique kind of flavor. It's like, that's us. And if we're running somebody else's race, if we're trying to be like everybody else, if we're living the life that's expected of us by other people, we're not living our life, so we're not shining our light. We're not doing us. And so from this place, I realized that finally, and it was a light switch moment, and it was a never again. And up until that moment, I was very shy. And most people who know me now,
that's hard to believe, actually.
Yeah, most people who know me now are like, you were shy. I wasn't quiet, but I was for sure shy. I was only really kind of myself with the people that were closest to me. And now, like, I don't have to know you at all. Like, I am 100% me from the get-go. And that took time. But in that moment, and this is the thing too, change happens in an instant. Change doesn't take any time. Preparing for change takes time. When I'm not ready. And then eventually you're ready. And in that moment, it just happens because it's enough is enough. I can't take this anymore. And so that was my moment. And ever since then, I'd been coaching throughout, but doing it for free. And after my dad passed, I gave myself some time. I was with my family for about a year. And then I moved to Arizona, went to medical school, spent 5 years over there. A next beautiful, beautiful chapter. I grew, matured, learned so much, had the gift of working with so many patients and clients, and really getting clear on how I wanted to serve the world and getting trained in various modalities such as NLP and finishing the medical program. And after that, just went full into my coaching. And I've been really blessed at this point I've worked with people from around the world and getting to really help them connect to what I call their true self, getting them to realize what is the truest expression of who they are. What is that extraordinary life without regret for them? And how can I help them make that real? And that's my purpose. That's my mission. That's what I choose to devote my life to.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. So,
Holy moly.
so that was a quick hour. So we got you to commit to a half hour, and now we're almost an hour in. So I do think we need to wrap up here. And I, as you probably know, I could talk to you forever because I love hearing what you have to say. But I'll have more time to talk to you. So Jillian, is there anything else that you would like to ask Dr. Jamil before he jumps off the air? And I'm going to go ahead and put your website up too, Jamil, so that if people want to find out more about you, they can find you.
And they'll be in the notes, but also if you're listening to this in your car, it's Jamil Sayegh. Did I say that right, Jamil?
Yeah, Jamil Sayegh. Yeah. You got it.
Yeah. It's JAM as in Mary, I, L as in Lima, S as in Sam, AYEG as in God, H.com. So, and they'll be in the notes as well. but jamilsayegh.com. You can check him out and get some coaching. I'm feeling a little overwhelmed right now. I'm not going to lie. There was a lot that spoke to me there. So thank you so much, Dr. Jamil. I appreciate it so much for being our guest today. Everybody stay with us for a minute here, and Jeff and I will be right back.
Go!
Jillian, what do you think? So now that Jamil can't hear us, there's no way he can hear us. Oh wait, he can. I can see him down there still. But you see why I like that guy, huh?
I do. I felt like I felt like this episode gave me a lot of things that I can personally work on. And for that, I'm very grateful. But if I feel that way, I'm sure there's tons of other people out there that feel the same way. So that's what's really exciting. And that's what's exciting about doing this show. I'm just getting into this moment of not caring what other people think. And as you know, Jeff, and some of the audience knows, is like, I'm just getting into this moment of just making those changes. The build up to my changes of which I just made recently, which is to start.
It took you, listen, it's taken you forever, right? Like when we first met, I mean, let's be honest about this, right? When we first met, you were in a completely different world than you are now. Right. I mean, completely different. You were doing different stuff. And I was like, wow, I can't believe this person will even talk to me because she's super famous and doing this stuff. And then stop that. You're like, this is my own interpretation. You can't argue with it. Right. Okay. So when I look at that and I say, Jillian Sidoti, this like amazing person, getting up on stage, teaching this very technical stuff. And you're teaching these classes to other lawyers. It's not like you're just teaching it to like random people. Like, so you're an expert in this field and you're like talking to me like I'm a normal person, which made me feel awesome. So thank you for that. But not only that, like, flash forward a few months and you're on my show and I'm telling you about Last Life Ever. And you're just like, yeah, that's what I want to do with my life. And I know it didn't happen that second, but the reality is you were working yourself towards that point. And then when you encountered Last Life Ever as a concept, you were like, yeah, this is what I'm looking for. And that's really, I think, what Jamil's saying, right? He's saying that, it takes a long time to build up to this stuff. And it might even take a while to actually actualize that change. But something changed in your brain that moment when you decided, no, I want to do Last Life Ever, right? When you made that decision. And of course, I'm putting a lot on that decision right now. I realize, and feel free to disagree with me, but it feels like to me, when you made that decision, that's when you changed. And now it's just getting there. It's just taking the steps that you need to do.
Well, I knew I wanted to make the change, right? And so I started towards making that change, but it was really hard. And for me, the reason why it was so hard is because of a lot of the things Dr. Jamil was saying, which is like, I care too much about what other people think. What will people think if I stop being a lawyer? I have people who rely on me for an income because I'm a lawyer. I can't stop being a lawyer because I have this employee, this employee, this employee, and this employee. And even the employees would tell me, you can't stop being a lawyer. What about us? And it was like, oh yeah, okay, what about you? Like, so it became just like this pressure cooker.
Yeah, but what about Jillian though, right? Jillian's got to do what's right for her. And that's the thing. I mean, and that's something that, and I know Jamil would say the same thing, right? And I know you know it too, because we've talked about this a lot, but that, to me, it's super, super important that we take care of ourselves first.
Right.
And Jamil did say that today on the show, right? I mean, we take care of ourselves first, because if we're not doing what we are supposed to be doing, it's like I always say, we owe it to ourselves, but we also owe it to the whole world to be the best version of ourselves.
Right.
Like we have to do it.
Yeah.
Like if we're not doing it, we're being selfish because we have something unique to offer the world. And, for me, I really believe that a big part of what I have to offer the world is Last Life Ever. And I know you feel the same way too. And so I feel like we don't have a choice. We have to do what we're doing. Like we just have to. It's not an option.
That's some bad NLP right there, because like, I don't want to feel like I have to do this. I want to feel like
Jamil, you agree with me, right?
Welcome back.
He's like, wait a minute, you're not allowed to bring me back. You didn't warn me. No,
that's completely cool.
I'm teasing a little bit, but Jillian, it's not that you have to do it. I feel like we have to do it because it's an expression of ourselves. If you don't feel that way, then it's not right for you, right?
Right.
Like I feel like I have to do it.
Notice it's the disagreement is in just the word. And this is where language becomes an issue for people. The way one person defines need and the context in that moment of what need means is different than the other person. And so you might feel, well, I don't have a choice. I have to do this. But you might say that from a place of excitement and love, and it's my purpose, and I'm being drawn to it, and the world needs it. And she might think, I don't need to do this. I choose to do this. And it's so incredible because I wouldn't want to do anything else. And so you both mean the same thing, but you use different words.
Yeah,
that's right. See, I knew Jamil agreed with me. We're just going to leave it at that. Man, he's gone. He just left. There's nothing we can do about it. We have to wrap up. Do you have a joke for us?
I do have a joke. I
have a joke too, but it's not very good.
Well, are jokes ever any good, Jeffrey? They're never good.
Well, I did tell that one really good joke. I think I'm just going to repeat that one.
Oh my God. All right. What do you call a mindful wolf?
A mindful wolf. Oh, I don't have any idea.
A werewolf.
Oh, man. that's that's way better than the joke I was going to tell.
Go ahead.
I don't have a joke.
Oh, all right. Well, there you go.
I mean, listen, I'm really intimidated by jokes today. I mean, first of all, like, TJ's joke was amazing. And then you just throw out this like great werewolf joke. And I mean, I don't know that I can really compete with that. I just don't have anything. Like all the jokes that I want to tell are really just, they're not like on topic at all. They're not mindful and stuff. So I'm just going to have to tell my favorite joke ever.
Go ahead.
Okay. All right. Knock, knock.
Who's there?
Boo.
Boo-hoo.
Why are you crying? It's only a joke. That's all I got.
Thank you, everybody, for joining us. I'm Jillian Sidoti. That is Jeffrey Holst. Jeff, what do you want to remind everybody to do?
I want to remind everyone to check out Dr. Jamil's website. No, wait, that's not it. I mean, do that too. But what I really want to remind them is to live the very best version of their last life ever.
Never gonna say